I'd like to start by introducing Dr. Jim Boone. Jim has a PhD in ecology, and he is the author of birdandhike.com, which is our go-to resource for all things Gold Butte and actually Nevada and any type of hiking or anything that you'd want to do around and in the Mojave Desert. Jim is a friend of mine, and I'm proud to say that. He and his wife Liz have been really good to me since I joined the organization about 9 years ago. And I am pleased as can be to welcome him here tonight. Jim, I'm going to stop talking and let you start.
Well, thanks, Brenda. That's a great introduction. And thanks to everybody out there. This is my first time doing a Zoom presentation, so it feels funny to sit here in front of my computer and talk as if I'm talking to a crowd. But if you'll bear with me, we'll all get through it in the end. So a couple of months ago, Brenda asked me to do another talk about Gold Butte, and I pulled out one of my old presentations, and Brenda suggested perhaps that I could update it a little bit for what's happened in Gold Butte in the 8.5 years since it was established. So we'll talk about Gold Butte and we'll talk about some of the changes and things that have gone on. But first, as I always do when I get a captive audience, is I talk briefly about abandoned mining claim markers. These are hollow pipes that were put up on the landscape to mark the boundaries of mining claims. And people set these up in the 1960s and 70s. And by 1980, people realized that these things were trapping and killing untold numbers of birds. So the law was changed. And as of 2011, all of us citizens are welcome to go out on the public lands and knock these pipes down. So if you see one out there and you can get it, please do. And when you do, you might look inside. In Gold Butte, we average about 6 birds per pipe. This is an ash-toted flycatcher and 8 skulls from ash-toted flycatchers that were found in a pipe. And that's why we do this, is too many birds are dying. So if you're out and you see a pipe, just remember that the only good pipe is a pipe that's laying flat on the ground. And if you can, get coordinates and send me a note and let me know where you found it. Because if you found one, there's probably more. These things are set up in arrays, so there's never just one. And what happens a lot is people will see one along a road and they'll hop out of their truck and knock it down without realizing that there's a whole bunch more just over the hill. But if the one that's by the road is knocked down, then nobody can find the ones behind the hill when we're just driving through looking. Thanks for your help with that. We can help save the birds. So what and where are Gold Butte? So some of this discussion is probably going to be awfully rudimentary for people that have been going out here forever. But just to bring everybody up to speed, we'll start off with some of the basics. So what is Gold Butte National Monument? So a lot of people have asked over the years, where is the monument? As if they're going out to look for something like, the obelisk on the National Mall. But that's really the wrong impression. A national monument is really a national park, except that it's run by the BLM rather than the National Park Service. It just has a different name, but these are spectacular lands that are set aside for recreation and for conservation and to keep them for future generations. So Gold Butte was established in 2016, so we're 8.5 years on now. It's really been quite a journey. Gold Butte itself is about 37 miles long and 16 miles wide and includes about 300,000 acres. So it's a pretty big place. And if we think about the Gold Butte region, we often include the Bunkerville Slope up here at the end and the national park regions down along the river. And we refer to that as the Gold Butte region, which is actually 500,000, so 500,000 acres. It's a huge chunk of land. And if you're trying to drive out there from Las Vegas, it's about 95 miles to get to Whitney Pocket. Starting at Mesquite, of course, it's a lot closer. And from St. George, I think it's about an hour. I don't know the mileage from there. So 8.5 years on, what's changed? Well, to be honest, not very much. When we were trying to get Gold Butte designated, some of our most vociferous critics accused us of conspiring with Harry Reid and his son and the Chinese to convert Gold Butte into a giant solar field. We were going to put up chain link fences around it, keep everybody out, and build a solar plant. Well, as you can see, that didn't happen. Some of the other changes that you'll see when you're out is there's parking corrals have been established in some places. These are these posts that we've gone out on volunteer opportunities to set up to define campsites and road edges. And that's to keep is to give people a good idea of where to go and then to keep them kind of corralled so they don't keep spreading out farther and farther into the desert to sort of manage these things. So here's some posts along some roadways to kind of direct people and keep the roads from spreading out. But by and large, it's not very much. This is Whitney Pocket. All the land still looks just the same. We do have some kiosk signs and 2 outhouses in the Whitney Pocket area that are pretty handy. We're hoping to get a regular vault toilet before too long, but these things are all in the works, and everything seems to take longer than we would hope. But these kiosks are great sources of information about the area with signs and information about what you can do and things to watch out for. As you're driving around in Gold Butte, you'll see directional signs all over the backcountry. These were put up by a grant that the Friends of Gold Butte got, and then with the help of the BLM, we got them all set up. So a lot better directional information for people trying to find these hidden gems out in the desert where there's not particularly great maps and no road signs or road names. There's a few information signs put up in different places. Some of you recognize this as Gold Butte Town Site. And some places like this, Friends of Gold Butte and other organizations have gotten together and made information signs to explain something about the area, the history, the geology, and the lives of the people that lived out there. So hopefully enriching people's experience when they are out visiting in Gold Butte. And ta-da, we actually have the first vault toilet installed in Gold Butte. This one is installed up in Cabin Canyon maybe 6 months ago or so, last winter. And it's a great resource in the little campground up there. And hopefully people from Mesquite will be able to use this. This was actually paid for by state recreation fees collected for ATVs, as I understand it. So it's a great way that your ATV monies are going back to provide you with something useful when you're in the outdoors. And of course, we do have some dedicated BLM staff now. These guys are our field crew out there, and we have an office man or a management manager who spends most of her time in the office doing paperwork and other important things to keep us going. So those are some of the major good things have changed in Gold Butte. As we saw, other than that, very little has changed. Unfortunately, however, there are dark clouds on our horizon. The Senate Republicans want to make about 250 million acres of Western public lands available for sale. Some people have estimated that number actually at 300 million. Now, they're saying that they want to sell off 3 million acres this year. So out of those 250 million acres, they're going to give developers an opportunity to pick the 3 million acres that they want. And unfortunately, selling those lands in the bill puts a rush job on it. It's all done without hearings, without debate, or without public input. And it could have a huge effect on the way we use our public lands, depending on what 3 million acres are sold off. And then, of course, the people that are pushing these are interested in selling off all of the public lands. And so this 3 million acres this year might just be a prelude to 3 million acres every year until they're gone. So how will that affect Gold Butte? Well, this is a map I zoomed in. This is Gold Butte in here, sort of this mostly white area. This is the top of Virgin Peak. So these lands are supposed to be sold off for affordable housing. And I'm having a real hard time wondering what kind of affordable housing they think they can build up on the top of Virgin Peak. There's also the Million Hills Wilderness Study Area, which is being set up or proposed for sale. not to mention all of the Bunkerville Slope. So this is all the land between the Virgin River and the Virgin Mountains, which surprisingly includes the Bundy Ranch, traditional Bundy Ranch area, most of the Mormon Mesa, and then lots of other surrounding lands. If we look down south a little bit in Aviquime, this is Aviquime down here. It's pretty much, um, it's pretty much these brown lands. So virtually suggesting to sell off all of Aviquime. If we look up on Mount Charleston in the Spring Mountains, the green lands here are Forest Service. So this is actually huge sections of the Spring Mountains National Recreation Area that they're proposing for sale. I've been hiking in here. This is great country. I hate to be locked out of it. I've hiked all through here and in through here. Again, great country. It would really be a shame to have affordable housing for millionaires built in these places. And up at St. George, now I don't know these lands very well, but this is your Pine Valley Mountains, and a big chunk of the Dixie Valley National Forest is being proposed for sale. I think these are real. I think it's unlikely that this is going to get through because there's so much opposition, but this is a real hair on fire type of thing where if we don't act now to let our legislators know that we oppose this, these things could go through and we could really be on the hurting end of getting out in the places where we like to hike and ride and shoot and hunt and do all the other things we like to do on our lands. So there's some dark clouds on the horizon for Gold Butte and surrounding lands. But enough of that. Let's go to Gold Butte and enjoy how pretty and scenic it is right now. So before you go out to Gold Butte, you need to be aware that it is a wild and rugged country, and you need to be very careful in how you travel and that you're prepared for it. So always take plenty of water, take the 10 essentials, and be sure to be prepared for things to go wrong and for you to get stuck out there. Cell phone doesn't work very well in most places, but there are a few odds and ends, so you should always try. But be prepared to self-rescue or at least stay with your vehicle for a couple of days if you're in the real backwoods. There are some signs out to help caution people. So they do recommend good vehicles and limited cell service. And if anybody asks, yes, you actually can get to the Grand Canyon National Park from here, but it's not the best way to get there. And of course, the usual sorts of things when you're out and about. Always be careful where you put your hands and feet when you're walking around in the desert, because you never know what might be back in a crack. So Gold Butte, heading out. What is it that makes up a great landscape? Well, to me, it's the geology. I get kind of tired on big flat landscapes, but give me some mountains and I can get really excited. So the great landscapes out there are remarkable. This is Whitney Pocket, beautiful place. This is down towards Gold Butte town site. This is the north end of Paradise Ridge. Just beautiful, beautiful landscapes. This is the backside of Azure Ridge looking west up through a huge earthquake fault that split off the end of a mountain range there. It's more big landscapes. This is down towards the south end in the Scalen Dugway area, looking out towards Lake Mead. Really spectacular mountains and valleys and water. Sunset colors can be really remarkable, getting alpenglow on the Virgin Peak in the winter with a little bit of snow to highlight it. Just a beautiful place. And of course, it's always great to see mountain ranges marching off into the sunset. So what makes this landscape the way it is the geology. And the geology is remarkable. We have two major fault zones in Gold Butte, sort of a northern one and a southern one. And then off to the east, we have a fault. These ones in Gold Butte proper break the area up into sort of the northern quarter, the middle half, and the southern quarter. All of the lands to the east of the Grand Wash, or to the west of the Grand Wash Cliffs, all out in here, is part of the jumbled up basin and range landscape. And the other side of it is the Colorado Plateau, where all the rock layers were laid down and still are the way they were originally laid down. But just across the line on this side, we have them all jumbled up. So Gold Butte is cut up by a bunch of big faults, and the landscape is all jumbled up, making for these remarkable landscapes. So at the northern end, the northern quarter of Gold Butte, we have metamorphic rocks that are 1.6 billion years old. Those are really, really old rocks. And in fact, this black ridge was an independent microcontinent back before Pangea. Pangea is when all of the continents agglomerated together into one big continent. And then when Pangea split up, this little microcontinent split up again all by itself and eventually wandered over and drifted into Nevada and got agglomerated onto North American plate in the continent. So really, really remarkable old rocks up in here. The middle section is sedimentary rocks. We have limestones and sandstones. The limestones, the gray rocks, were laid down on the bottom of an ocean starting about 500 million years ago. And the sandstone, these lighter whites and red and other colorful rock, were much younger. And these were laid down as sand dunes back when the dinosaurs roamed the earth. So old, but not very old in comparison to other rocks. And then at the south end of Gold Butte, the southern quarter, we have granitic rocks. These are rocks that formed deep underground. It was magma that solidified deep underground. And if you go over to the Grand Canyon where all the rocks are in place, these are the rocks that are on the bottom layer of the Grand Canyon. But here in Gold Butte, with everything all jumbled up from earthquake fault activities, these rocks are on the surface. So again, really remarkable things. So what's in Gold Butte? Well, there's about 100 miles of main roads that get to the various corners of Gold Butte. And then there's about 250 miles of lesser roads that get off into all the different corners. So a few places they don't get for one reason or another. But all told, there's about 350 total miles of roads in the sort of the greater Gold Butte region. It's a lot of interesting places to drive. I've driven almost all of them, and that was back when I had a Jeep, and I'm a big truck now. I can't quite go so many places, but a lot of beautiful country out there. For people going out to Gold Butte, there's 5 main points of interest that people like to visit. The first one is Whitney Pocket, the end of the pavement. It's an area of colorful sandstone where people like to gather up in groups for then carpooling out into the desert or dropping off ATVs from trailers and taking the ATVs out. People like to camp and do other sorts of things. So here's people today use parking, getting their rigs ready off the trailers and ready for a long ride. People camping, having a great time. The Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC, spent some time out in Gold Butte, and this is their masterpiece. They were making dams around the Virgin Mountains, and they made this beautiful dam at Whitney Pocket. The dam is curved and has this curving staircase that goes up onto the side of it. Unfortunately, it never held very much water because the sandstone is too porous, but it's a beautiful stone structure that they built. And the native people spent time there and left some of their marks on the land. You'll have to poke around, see if you can find these. And of course, it's just a spectacularly beautiful place. One of the other main places that people like to go is the Falling Man petroglyph area, which is located just a little bit west of Whitney Pocket. This is the Falling Man petroglyph, which is a remarkable petroglyph. It's one of very few that show any kind of movement. So we can see this falling person their legs are swept up, their right arm is out an angle as if to brace the fall, and their left hand is just waving in the air, trying to catch what air they can. It would be interesting to know what actually happened that produced this petroglyph, but probably a tragic story. There's other petroglyph panels in the Falling Man area. This is our newspaper rock. We don't know what most of the stories are, but we can tell So this is the birthing page. Got some birthing stories out here. And I don't know what this is, a monster telling the kids to keep in line, hard to say. But just some remarkable stories out in there being told on Newspaper Rock. About a half mile out from Falling Man is 21 Goats petroglyph panel, which is high up on a wall. Again, a remarkable panel, and funny because if you count them up, there's not 21 and they're not goats. But however the name came about, it's stuck, and 21 Goats is a great place to visit. You can hike to it from Falling Man, or you can drive pretty close to it coming in from the other direction. This is Calvin's Rock, another remarkable set of petroglyphs here. This one is remarkable in part because we can see different styles of petroglyphs, and we can discern different ages of petroglyphs. So it's remarkable in interpreting the coming and going of cultures and the way that different cultures did things. You can think of this as in Western culture, where the Greeks had their style, and then the Romans had their style, and the Renaissance and modern art and things like that. So stuff changes over time, and we can see that playing out here on Calvin's Rock, which again is near Falling Man petroglyph. Another remarkable place that people like to visit is Little Finland. It's a interesting sandstone eroded limestone fortified place with lots of interesting and fanciful shapes. This is one of my favorites. Looks like some kind of a monster or a dinosaur or something. And people think they see these and they think, well, that must be big. But this one's actually only about, I don't know, the head's about 12 inches deep, maybe almost life size for a little monster. Another one of my favorite is the Angry Bird. Looks like a rock or something up there, tilted forward as if he's ready to pounce. The ogre is a favorite shape that people like to come out and photograph. And then there's just everywhere you look, there's some little kind of thing, another little angry monster. When you're out with some imagination, every hole through the rocks becomes an eye, and every gap becomes a mouth, and you just start seeing all kinds of wild things. I like this one too. It's remarkable that this arm can stand out like this for all these years, telling us to turn left or go that way or something. And if you happen to be out there at sunset, when there's color, clouds and color in the western sky, it's just remarkable how the light plays on this, and it just turns it into fire. Another interesting place out in Gold Butte is Devil's Throat. This is a sinkhole, and we think it was, well, we think because no one's been underground to tell, we think that there was gypsum underground here, and that as water moved through the soils, back in the Ice Age type times, the gypsum dissolved away and formed a cavity. And eventually the roof of the cavity became unstable and caved in, producing the sinkhole. And there's a whole bunch of sinkholes out here, but this is the most recent one. Now, back in the day, the BLM put up a fence around the sinkhole so that people wouldn't inadvertently walk in. And that fence was out in here somewhere. And now you can still find parts of it down in the bottom of the hole. But they put up this one, and we can see that even this one is getting close to the edge and starting to fall in. So now the BLM pulled the fence way back. And unfortunately, you can't see down in the hole anymore. And so that encourages people to hop the fence and jump in and walk out. But if you do that here at the closest point, this is the most dangerous point currently on the edge because it's undercut. So it's not a very good idea to top the fence at all. And if you do, don't just walk out to the edge at this point. So the fifth of the major points of interest is the Gold Butte town site, these historical places. There's virtually nothing left down at Gold Butte of the original town site. There's two concrete slabs that had some kind of building, a tent, some kind of a building on them. All the buildings were canvas tents. And we can see in this comparison of a photo taken in 1907 Although I wonder if it actually wasn't shot in 1906, but 1 year, what's the difference? But at any rate, compared to what it looks like today. So back in the day, this building in the background with the the flag was the post office. We can see wagons coming in, bringing supplies or something, perhaps, and a few of the cabins, the wall tents that people lived in. All of that's gone now. But 2,000 people lived here back in the day. After the town dried up and everybody left and the post office closed, two old coots moved down to the area and took up down there. There's two gentlemen. There was Art Coleman and Bill Garrett were buried here. So Coleman and Garrett moved in out here after the town site and the miners left. Coleman was a miner that had a remarkable nose for following a vein of gold through a mountain. And Garrett was a rancher, a cowboy. And he actually rode in the Buffalo Bills Wild West shows before he moved out here. And together they made up a partnership where when the ranching was good, Coleman would help out with that. And when the ranching wasn't so good, Garrett would help out with the mining, and they made a life for themselves. They were well liked by uh, their their peers in town, and people honored them by setting up this little gravesite for them down there near where their house was. One of the things that remains is the old well. We think this was probably started as a mine shaft that somebody was looking for gold and it flooded, and it was very convenient then because the background here was downtown uh, Gold Butte City. You can see the concrete slabs back here, and the grave sites are just back over in here. There's a little bit of mining equipment around. This is the biggest piece that remains. And you can go back and see now the entrance to one of the main mines. I believe this one is graded off now. And one of the other mines is nearby. And this one, you can just go in the entrance and then it's graded inside. And the grates are designed to keep people from going down and getting hurt while leaving openings big enough for wildlife and bats and things to come and go and use the cool tunnels. Other things to see in Gold Butte is there's two wilderness areas. There's the Lime Canyon Wilderness Area here and the Jumbo Springs down at the bottom. Lime Canyon Wilderness Area is a series of ridges actually that are cut through by faults, and this wash runs through them. So you can actually walk through the middle of a mountain by walking down this wash. It's pretty remarkable. The ancients liked it down there. This is a habitation site that you can visit if you're hiking down through, sort of on the far end of Lime Wash. And of course, remarkable landscapes up in there. Just lots of grand scenery and some really goofy geology down in there. Makes for a lot of interesting things, places to poke around and photograph and explore. Jumbo Springs Wilderness Area is an interesting place. This is the quintessential wilderness area, where the wilderness area includes this is the upper edge, includes this cliff face, not the flats up on the top. This is the boundary right along the top of the ridge here. So when you go, again, this is the boundary. All this is the wilderness area, and it's hard to get into. It's just too steep and rocky. It is remarkable for the vegetation, though. You got these steep, rocky hillsides like this that look rather lifeless, but you get down in there and it's just all kinds of interesting vegetation. But in true wilderness character, this little piece of land is not wanted by anybody. Nobody can mine it. Nobody can ranch it. There's no timber to cut. There's nothing out there, nothing but lizards. And this is the kind of place this is best left forever for the lizards. And these are the kind of places that we often get for wilderness areas in Nevada, places that nobody else wants. But it does provide us remarkable places for recreation And of course, the lizards are really happy to have their land protected, and so difficult that we can hardly even get in there to bother them. So getting out to Gold Butte. Gold Butte is paved. Of course, we put that in quotes because there's probably 500,000 potholes in it. Now, Friends of Gold Butte and Clark County and the BLM get together every year or so and throw a couple hundred tons of patch. And it's not exactly holding its own, but it's keeping up, and it's not too terribly awful to get out there. The pavement ends at Whitney Pocket, so just as you're arriving at the camping area, 21 miles to get down there. And beyond that, everything is a dirt road, just as it's always been. Leaving Whitney Pocket, there's a lot of cobblestones. It's a pretty difficult piece of road to drive on unless you really air down your tires, but it's oh so worth it to get out there. If you get down towards the Gold Butte town site, the granite rocks make a much different soil, and the roads are actually much more comfortable if you get far enough down. As we mentioned earlier, there are directional signs along the main roads, but it's helpful to take a map and keep track of where you are as you're driving, at least for your first couple of times out. Get a good idea of how to get back. When you get off the main roads, there's some of the side roads are just two tracks, but are pretty good overall. This is down at the end of Cedar Basin going towards Jumbo Peak. It's actually a pretty good road, except it's growing in with bushes, and you're going to get pinstriped if you drive down there. But at least there's not big ruts. Some of the other roads are just driving in washes where you're weaving between the bushes and the rocks and the trees. But it's, wonderful experience to get down and really feel like you're driving uh, out in a wild, wild place. On the other hand, some of the roads are just plain scary. This is Scanlon Dugway. It was built by hand back in the old days. And I've talked to Jeep people who say this road is fine, and I've talked to ATV people who say this is the scariest thing they ever did in their whole life, and they're never doing it again. So if you get down there, you might walk part of it and see what you think before you drive it, or go with somebody who knows it. But when you get down there, you can see the Colorado River in the background, mountains over in Arizona. It's a beautiful place down there. So if you go out to Gold Butte, it's pretty much a long ways from everywhere. And a lot of people who go decide to camp. A lot of people stay at Windy Pocket. For me, give me a wide spot at an old dusty road, and I will be perfectly happy. Of course, for people who don't camp, Mesquite offers lots of other opportunities. So if we get out to Gold Butte, we want to go hiking. There is one designated trail. There's no signs, but there's a sign saying protect your uh, archaeological resources. But other than that, there's no signs. And the one trail follows an old road and it's pretty short, but it does lead back to Falling Man. Other than that, there's a few use trails where people have gone to popular places and a trail just sort of gets beaten into the ground. This is the 21 Goats panel back here. So this is the use trail to 21 Goats. And then, of course, there are lots of old mining roads that are not drivable anymore, and they make good hiking routes through the desert. Most of our hikes will end up just going down washes or following along ridges or just scrambling up in the rocks. Lots of wild things. Other than hiking, what can you do out there? Well, you can visit some of these remarkable sacred sites. It's a petroglyph panel that is just remarkable. It's a bit of a hike to get there, but it is a remarkable panel. People can visit historic ranching sites. And you always need to wonder, why in the world would anybody want to ranch out in Gold Butte? And we have to remember that back in the old days when the ranchers first got here, the land didn't look like this. Back in those days, it rained, there was grass, and vegetation, and they could run thousands of head of cattle out here. But the climate is changing and things are drying out, and it's just not a good place to run cows anymore. But there's still some interesting historical sites out there to visit. This is the figure 8 corral along Mud Wash on the way to Little Finland. There's lots of old mines out there, and while none of them are safe to get into, It's always fun to look in and see what you can see. And some of the reasons these things, this one is now graded off, so you can't get in this far anymore. But one of the reasons is because when you look at this, this looks like a solid rock um, uh, footing here, bottom of the cave, bottom of the tunnel. It's not. This is that there's actually wood planks under this, and this is dirt and pack rat poop pile on top of it. And I didn't realize it until I stepped on it with one foot and heard it creak, and just sort of forced myself to fall backwards away from it. Fortunately, it didn't cave in. But you can see in the background, that's a cave in. So these things happen. Biking is getting to be more and more popular out in Gold Butte. You can bike on any of the old roads you'd like. Horseback riding, it's fairly popular. A lot of people get out and ride their horses. Hunting is still entirely legal. Entirely legal. These guys were out dove hunting, and bighorn hunting is a pretty big deal in Gold Butte too. They let, I think, 6 permits per year, and everybody gets their bighorn in Gold Butte. Of course, off-highway vehicles is a lot of fun. You get together with your friends or your family and go for a long ride. There's some great loops to do out in Gold Butte where you don't hardly have to backtrack at all. And there's even people that pack all their camping gear on their ATV and head out that way. What a great way to camp, if you ask me. Photography is big. There's remarkable landscapes to photograph. The sunlight is always changing. Some days are cloudy, some days are sunny. And then, of course, there's lots of rare plants and animals and other interesting things to photograph out there. So Gold Butte, it's a great place to get out and find your grand adventure. You can find it on your own, or you can do it with the help of Friends of Gold Butte. This is the visitor center on downtown Mesquite. And people can go down here and talk to real people and get advice and information. There's even friendly people. And if you need one, you come in without a shirt, you can always buy a t-shirt in there, or pick up a map and help find your way around out in Gold Butte. Gold Butte offers uh, guided hikes during the hiking season, so the cooler months of the year. Some of them are pretty easy and go out on ridge lines and flat areas. Some of them go out and scramble around in the rocks, and everybody's welcome to come along if you think you're up for it. So in addition to guided hikes, Friends of Gold Butte offer the occasional guided camp out too. If you want more information on your own, you can always go to my website, birdandhike.com, or if you click on either the hiking or the Gold Butte buttons, it'll take you to a table of contents for adventures and things to see and do in Gold Butte. Every web page leads you to something like this, where there's an overview of the hike. There's a link to a map that you can download with waypoint locations on the map to help you keep going straight. There's special sections on watching out for unexpected hazards you might find along the way. Like maybe there's an open mine shaft that people don't recognize. Always information on getting to the trailhead, detailed information about the hike, lots of pictures, often annotated. And as I said, the GPS coordinate, so you can make sure you go the right way and don't get lost. So with all of that, I encourage you to get out and learn about Gold Butte and learn to love the place, and then hopefully get involved in helping to defend your national monument. There are dark forces out there that want to take these things away from us, and we need to protect our most important places as best we can. So do we have questions?
Yes, we do have at least one. I know I see one in the chat. Thank you, Jim, for that. I appreciate your being here, and thanks for the great overview. You've addressed pretty much everything that's going on out there in the monument. Um, Joy asks, what is the name of the Gold Butte spring that has the endangered relic leopard frog, and how easy is it to get to?
There are a couple of springs in Gold Butte with relic leopard frogs, and none of them are easy to get to. So there's Quail Spring down at the south end. So you go down to Gold Butte town site and keep going a ways. and you need to get a map. Go on Bird and Hike and look up Quail Spring. There were some down at Tassai Spring, which is actually in Parashant, but you pretty much go through Gold Butte to get there. And there's another spring just north of Arabata Ranch that might actually be in Parashant too, come to think of it, that has frogs in it. And there's lots of other places with frogs besides Gold Butte. They've been spreading them around pretty prolifically lately.
We have one in the chat. It says, Jim, are all of your bird and hike coordinates still referenced to the NAD 27 datum? Most GPS devices now use WGS 84 datum. Could cause confusions for some folks.
Yes, and to be honest, it's something I've been thinking about. But the gold standard for maps is the USGS topo map. And the USGS topo maps are marked in NAD 27. And so there's good reasons to leave it. There's good reasons why I did that in the first place, and there's good reasons to leave it. And the other thing is that your GPS unit actually doesn't care what kind of coordinates it is. It has its internal coordinates that it uses, and then what you see on the screen is what you choose to display. So you should be able to choose to display whatever coordinates you want. And if you have trouble with downloading my coordinates to your GPS, you can download them from my website. They come down as a GPX file, which is like a trade language. Every GPS recognizes that language. And then upload them. And it will upload them to whatever your GPS wants to use. So the only problem you have using mine is if you try to hand type them into your GPS. So figure out how to upload them and it'll solve all your troubles.
Asks, limestone can be sharp and tough on tires. Are there any places to be extra careful driving? Great seeing Gold Butte again, even if just in photos. Thanks.
Yeah, so yeah, tires are always a problem. We need to make sure if we're going to Gold Butte, we've got relatively new tires with good tread. Most of the limestone areas and sandstone areas and granite areas are fairly easy on the tires because the cobbles tend to be rounded. Now you always need to be really careful of rocks on the side of the road, because with those you catch your sidewalls, and then all bets are off if you bust a sidewall. But for going through the tread, the worst ones are up in Cabin Canyon in that area, where we have metamorphic rock, and the metamorphic rock tends to fragment with really sharp edges and long pointy sharp edges. And I think my friend and colleague Frank Golden was working up in Cabin Canyon, and I think he's punctured 3 tires driving up there. And last I heard, he's just plain done with that area.
Hey Jim, this is Mike. They last fall the water district plowed that Cabin Canyon Road all the way up to Wire Springs. I guess some kind of water thing that they had to do to keep that road open with a bulldozer all the way up there, so you can go within about 1,000 feet of Virgin Peak up there at the top. I don't know if you've ever been up there. I'm sure you've hiked up there, but you go to the corral, the overpass, not the corral, but the cow grate, and take a left and just keep going. So it's really a nice drive now. That was this spring, I guess. It wasn't last fall. It was this spring they did that. So when I'm out there next, we'll have to take some people up out there, because I think Mitch and I went up. I know, and had a great time.
Well, good to know. We're losing access to a lot of our lands because the roads are getting degraded. We don't have ranchers out there. Well, we have Bundy plowing the roads. Those are the best roads in Gold Butte. But the mining roads and stuff in the backcountry are just deteriorating, disappearing into the ground. So it's good to know that somebody's out there maintaining roads so we can keep access to some of these far-flung places. But thanks for the update.
Yeah, this Mike again. Some of the different caves that are out there. Like Micah Mine has got a cave and it doesn't have a grate on it. Some of those They're dangerous in a couple ways, aren't they? With the Isn't there some disease you can get from them, and some of them have uranium, so you don't really want to go in those at all. I don't. I'm not going to, anyways. At least that's what Frank Golden says. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I'm always a sucker for a hole in the ground. I used to do a lot of caving, and so if I can, I like to poke my nose in mines too. And you're right, there are still plenty of mines out there that are open. So there's all kinds of hazards. Um, the main hazard, of course, is rockfall and collapsing, or boards on the floor that you don't realize are boards until you start stepping on them and they creak. Um, it's 100-year-old boards covering up a mine shaft. It's not something you want to walk on. There's bats, and bats can carry some diseases. And if you and there's some mice that carry diseases that live in them. And if you stir up too much dust, possibly something could happen to you. Not very likely. Um, Bad air is always a problem. You need to be careful of carbon monoxide. People don't don't realize carbon monoxide building up unless you're taking a detector with you. Um, so that's always a problem. I got into one time that had dead air in it, and I started gasping. Um, it was like you try to breathe in and nothing happened. It was very, very strange. Um, I got out of there pretty fast. But the safest thing to do is don't go in them. So yeah, I don't know. We can imagine all kinds of other dangers of, monsters and things back in them. Well, rattlesnakes like them a lot. So you always got to be careful looking where you're stepping, or just stay out.
That's my theory. Stay out. That's for me. We have another chat person, Joy says, and don't forget to contact your congressional representatives regarding the public lands grab. It's always good to put in a word for keeping public lands public. Anyone else?
Yeah, Jim, I had a question about at the old town site, there's a big granite rock that's been ground down into a couple of circles. The story I heard was it was donkeys dragging rocks to break up gold ore. But there is the rock there with a couple of circles in it. What's the true story? Do you know?
Yeah, I think that's a place they call Gibbs Camp or Gabs Camp, and it's an arastra. So it's an old form of milling technology. So they took the top of the boulder and they cut some grooves in it, and then they put a post up the center of it. And from the post they put so a post in the center, and then they put a cross piece on it, and then both ends of the cross piece hooked to chains that drag rocks around the center pivot. Then, and you can use a donkey to walk around and do it. And so you put your ore in the groove in the bottom, and then the rocks drag across it and break it up, and then you scrape up the ore and extract the gold from it. So it's called a Spanish arastra. Perhaps it was invented by the Spaniards back in the really old days, and then that technology was imported here. And some people say that that's evidence that the Spaniards were the conquistadors were down there mining gold, but I think that the miners at Gab's Camp made that for themselves.
Yeah, I think that in Crazy Eddie's little hand or self-published book, he talks about Spaniards and chasing gold and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and Bigfoot and all kinds of other things. They didn't call him Crazy Eddie for no reason.
Hey, Jim, what would be your favorite place in Gold Butte if you had to pick one, which I know is difficult with all these beautiful pictures, but what would be your favorite place?
Boy, that's a tough one, and I'm not sure I'd really want to say. Some of the places that are really, really nice is the upper end of Paradise Valley. Um, the lands down just north of the Jumbo Springs wilderness area. So like walking along that ridge where I took those pictures from Jumbo Springs. The views from up there are just spectacular looking to the south. And there's some nooks and crannies that are closer in that we'll let you find by yourself.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Okay. Another question from the chat. Would you say that Gold Butte is really the bridge between the Basin and Range Province and the Colorado Plateau?
Yes, it is. It's kind of a long discussion of the geology, but with plate tectonics and the North American plate getting bashed into by the Pacific plate caused a large crumple zone on the edge of the North American plate. And the crumple zone extends out to the Grand Wash. So if you stand in the bottom of the Grand Wash and you look east, you see land layers that are intact from the original when they were laid down. So imagine you go to the Grand Canyon, you look in and you see all those bands of layers. They're all laid down just the way they were, just the way nature laid them down. And then in Gold Butte, we have all those rocks, but ours are all jumbled up. So yeah, it's definitely it's right there at the edge. I mean, you could maybe make the argument that the edge is the bottom of the Grand Wash, which is actually in Parashant, but I mean, nickels and dimes, we're going to claim it too.
Jim, thank you very, very much. And thank all of you that attended this evening. I think that was a great presentation. I was looking forward to it myself. I always like to hear Jim because he's just an authority on all these things. And I learn every time I'm around the man. So I have to say I'm grateful to him for putting this together and to all of you for showing up with good questions and good commentary.